July 7th, 1945, 27,000 feet above Iwo Jima. Dawn had risen only minutes before, but up here, the world was already burning gold. A thin halo of sunlight washed over the wings of the new arrivals. Sleek, wide-spanned monsters of polished metal. Beneath them, clouds rolled in slow, pale sheets, glowing like drifting embers over a wounded ocean. The air was razor-thin, cold enough to freeze exposed skin in seconds. Yet every pilot in the formation felt sweat building beneath their flight suits. They weren't afraid of the cold. They were afraid of what waited ahead. Captain Dean Harkness, 23, Kansas farm boy turned fighter jock, tightened his gloved hand around the control stick of his brand-new P-47N Thunderbolt, the long-range brute built to escort B-29s all the way to Japan and back. He'd flown razor-wing P-51Ds months earlier. He'd danced in the skies over Saipan. But this was a different kind of machine. N model Thunderbolt. Hell, it's almost like flying a locomotive, he thought. The aircraft vibrated around him, massive, rugged, uncompromising. Beneath the long cowling, its 2,800 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R2800 growled with a steady, almost predatory resonance. Fully fueled, the jug was heavy, far heavier than anything Japanese pilots expected to climb with. And that is why they laughed. Rumors had already reached the squadron. The Japanese think the P-47N is too big, too slow, too clumsy to fight. In briefing tents, pilots joked about it. On the airfield, mechanics laughed harder. But up here, climbing over a rising sun, the mood was different. Harkness glanced left. Lieutenant Frank Minnow Delacroix, age 20, New Orleans native, the youngest in the squadron, nervously tapped his throttle. To the right, Major Elias Hito, half Japanese, half Texan, one of the finest dive fighters in the Pacific, scanned the horizon with the tension of a man who'd buried too many friends. "They don't know what this jug can do," Hito had said the night before. "Those Zero boys have never chased something that drops faster than gravity." Ahead of them cruised a formation of B-29 Superfortresses, silver giants hauling their payload toward the Japanese mainland. Their contrails streaked behind them like scars across the morning sky. The Thunderbolts were their shield. Wind hissed across the canopy. Harkness steadied his breathing. Beneath the calm, anxiety gnawed. He carried a folded note inside his leather jacket, his mother's handwriting, one sentence. "Come home safe, Dean. Don't let the war keep you." He wondered if he would be alive to read it again. Then, a crackle over the radio. "Eagle lead, radar contact. Multiple bogies, high and diving, bearing 310. Harkness looked up. Dots in the sky, dark, fast, zeros. Their wings glinted as they tilted into attack formation, sunlight catching their tips like drawn blades. Thin, agile, merciless. Japanese pilots preferred to strike from above, using the first pass to scatter the escorts, then tear into the bombers with cannon and resolve hardened by years of war. Minnow muttered, "Christ, there's a whole circus of them." But Hito didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled. He'd been waiting for this moment. The enemy fighters were about to make the same mistake they'd made for months, believing the massive, long-range P-47N was a lumbering target. They didn't know that this beast, heavy as it was, could dive faster than anything they'd ever seen. They didn't know that past 480 mph, a Zero shook like a dying leaf. They didn't know the jug could hit 505 mph straight down and still hold together. But they would. As the Zeros fanned out into attack lines, their pilots saw only big, yellow-tailed escorts in tight formation. Too big, too slow, too American. Some laughed, some saluted, some locked onto their first kills of the morning. They didn't realize they had just triggered the deadliest stage of the fight, the vertical war, where altitude became ammunition and gravity the final judge. Harkness throttled forward. Engines roared. Props bit into the thin air. The Thunderbolts surged into position, sunlight flaring off their extended wings. "Eagle Squadron," Major Hito called out, voice steady, decisive. "Let's show them what laughs at gravity." The sky tightened. Contrails looped. The distance closed. And 30,000 feet above an ocean scarred by years of fire and blood, the battle for the vertical began. The Zeros hit like knives thrown from heaven. They sliced down through the thin, rising light. Pale green fuselages shimmering as they accelerated, their engines screaming in synchronized hunger. The formation split into 3 spears, each aimed directly at the yellow-tailed Thunderbolts, guarding the flank of the B-29s. Captain Dean Harkness watched them descend. Their wings flexed. Their guns glinted. Their confidence radiated like heat. They believed the kill was already theirs. Harkness pushed his throttle forward. The big P-47N surged, the cockpit rumbling as if an angry storm was trapped inside the fuselage. His heart hammered against his ribs. Sweat curled down his forehead despite the sub-zero air. "Stay tight," Major Hito ordered. "Do not turn with them. Let them come to us." That was the rule. You never fought a Zero, not unless you intended to die doing it. The Japanese Mitsubishi A6M still retained its legendary low-speed agility even in 1945. Its controls were light as feathers, its roll rate deadly. In a flat circle fight, it was king. But the sky today wasn't flat. The fight wouldn't be either. Minnow's voice crackled over the radio, tense and sharp. "They're close. 200 yards. Jesus, they're fast." Harkness braced. The first Zero dove past him in a flash of pale green and rising sun red. Tracers sputtered past his canopy like burning insects. The Zero pulled up, hard, banking for a second pass. Another swooped in from above, this one firing early, long streaks of white smoke pouring from its wing guns. Harkness jerked the stick left, the massive jug creaking under the sudden torque. Bullets snapped past, chewing through empty air where his cockpit had been seconds earlier. Minnow wasn't as lucky. A burst tore across his vertical stabilizer. His Thunderbolt shuddered violently. "I'm hit. Stabilizer's damaged. Still flying, but she's shaking like hell." Hito's voice cut in, cold and clinical. "Don't run. Don't climb. Dive." It was the moment they had trained for. The moment the P-47N stopped being prey. Harkness shoved the nose down. The P-47N dropped like a falling star. At first, the Zero on his tail followed eagerly, diving after its wounded-looking target. To a Japanese pilot, the logic was simple. The jug was heavy, overweight, and sluggish. A dive was an act of desperation. Nothing that bulky could outrun a Zero. But then the air changed. The wind around the canopy thickened from a whistle to a howl. The Pratt & Whitney engine roared into a deeper octave. The airspeed indicator needle snapped past 420, then 450, then 480 mph. Harkness felt the controls stiffen. The jug's nose trembled. The wings flexed. The Zero behind him began to shake. Its light frame wasn't built for these speeds. Its fabric-covered control surfaces fluttered dangerously. Inside its cockpit, the Japanese pilot, Lieutenant Saburo Takeda, gritted his teeth. He pushed the stick forward harder, trying to hold on to the American fighter as it accelerated impossibly fast. His goggles rattled. His canopy vibrated. He tasted fear. How is this machine still together? Why is it going faster? This is not possible. At 500 mph, the Jug stopped being an airplane and became a physical law. Mass, gravity, and fury intertwined. Harkness felt the pressure crush into his chest, his vision pinholed. The edges of the world blurred. He forced a breath. The Zero behind him couldn't. Its engine screamed in agony. Its wings trembled violently, flutter beginning to rip along the trailing edge. In the space of a heartbeat, Takeda made his last decision. He tried to pull out. The Zero disintegrated. One wing tore free. The fuselage twisted like wet paper. A trail of debris spiraled down through the sky, fluttering like burning leaves, dissolving into the sunlight. Harkness didn't celebrate. He couldn't. He was too busy trying not to black out as his Jug knifed through the atmosphere like a meteor. At 5:05 mph, he finally eased back, muscles screaming as he fought to regain control. The P-47N responded sluggishly, then steadied, climbing back toward the battle above. He gasped for air. His chest burned, his ears rang, but he was alive. "Eagle II back in the fight," he wheezed into his radio. Above him, the sky was now a sprawling mosaic of dogfights. Zeros twisting, diving, climbing, Thunderbolts streaking past in vertical slashes like silver axes. The Japanese had expected dancing partners. Instead, they'd found falling giants. Minnow's damaged Jug limped back into view, a trail of vapor leaking from his stabilizer, but still airborne. "You good?" Harkness called. "I'm alive," Minnow replied. "And someone's about to wish they didn't follow me." Because behind Minnow, two Zeros dove eagerly, committed to the chase, blind to the trap. Major Hito watched them, and smiled the same smile he had before. He angled his Jug into position, throttle wide open. "They still haven't learned," he murmured. "Let's show them the bottom of the world." He nosed over, and 3 more Thunderbolts followed him into the void. Major Elias Hito felt the familiar lurch in his stomach the moment his Thunderbolt tipped forward. Then came the weight, heavy, crushing, undeniable, as gravity grabbed the massive fighter by the wings and dragged it downward. The P-47N's nose sliced through the thin blue air like a blade, and the entire sky tilted into a vertical highway straight toward the Pacific. Behind him, the 3 other Thunderbolts joined the dive, their extended wings catching the sunlight as they fell in unison like steel arrows. And above them, 2 Japanese Zeros followed, initially with confidence, then with creeping realization. Hito didn't need to look back to know what was happening. He had seen it too many times. The Zeros began to tremble, their delicate wings, so perfect for low-speed turning, so beautifully balanced for knife-edge rolling, were never designed for this brutal, unforgiving descent. Their airframes quivered. Their ailerons buzzed. Their fabric skins fluttered like trapped birds. To the Japanese pilots, the world started to shake apart. To the Americans, the dive felt like coming home. Hito pushed his throttle to the wall, and the Jug accelerated. 480 mph, 500, 510. His teeth rattled. His oxygen mask pressed hard against his face. The altimeter spun down so fast it looked broken. The sky thinned. The wind screamed. The world blurred into streaks of blue and black and silver. Above him, 1 Zero lost control completely. It snapped sideways, nose pitched violently left, and in a heartbeat, it spiraled into a fatal tumble. Its pilot, a young reserve lieutenant from Okinawa, managed one gasp of disbelief before the G-forces crushed his lungs, and the sea swallowed him whole. But the second Zero held on. Barely. Its pilot, Ensign Daiichi Morimoto, was a veteran. Calm, hardened, relentless. He gripped the trembling stick with both hands, forcing the fragile fighter into the dive as it shuddered violently around him. The corners of his vision darkened. The airframe whined with an almost human cry. Yet he persisted. Morimoto wasn't chasing an airplane anymore. He was chasing honor, chasing a kill worth dying for. Hito narrowed his eyes. He felt the thrum in the wings deepen as the needle pushed toward 515 Mumpa. This was beyond the safe envelope. This was the edge of what even the jug could endure. He whispered to himself, "Hold together, sweetheart. Just a little more." He pulled an inch of throttle back. The sudden reduction in power sent a wave of stability through the frame. Microseconds later, with timing guided by instinct more than thought, he eased the stick back, slowly, carefully, perfectly. His Thunderbolt responded with a long, groaning arc as it began to pull out of the dive. Behind him, the rookie Thunderbolt pilots mimicked his motion. One overcorrected, his wings flexing dangerously, but the plane held together. Morimoto was not so lucky. When he saw Hito leveling off, he reacted too quickly, hauling back on the stick. The Zero's entire tail shuddered. The rudder fluttered so violently it tore at its hinges. His canopy clouded with condensation as blood rushed to his head. The aircraft screamed. The pilot screamed. Then, the tail separated. The Zero split open mid-air, disintegrating into a swirling storm of wooden splinters, aluminum fragments, and shredded fabric. For a moment, it resembled a blossom opening in reverse, petals blowing away on the wind. Hito didn't watch the wreckage fall. He already knew the outcome. He leveled out at 11,000 feet, lungs burning, arms aching from the strain. He blinked, trying to clear the dark spots from his vision. His engine rumbled, steady and resolute. "Eagle Lead, you still with us?" Harkness's voice crackled over the radio. "Still here," Hito replied. His breathing steadied. "2 confirmed losses behind us. I count at least 5 more Zeros descending to engage the B-29s. We rejoin and climb." Minnow's damaged Thunderbolt limped into formation beside him, riddled but defiant. "Sir, they're not giving up today." "No," Hito said, "and neither are we. Climb, now." The Thunderbolts rose again, slow at first, then with accelerating determination, as if the dive itself had fueled them with some primal force. Their wings cut upward through the layers of warming air, engines thundering. Far above, the B-29s plowed forward, unaware that the Thunderbolts below had just fought a battle that defied physics itself. But the fight wasn't over. 3 fresh Zero formations were streaking down, pilots eager, desperate, perhaps even vengeful after witnessing their comrades vanish into the abyss of speed. Harkness locked eyes on them through his canopy. This was no longer simply combat. This was a test of men, machines, and the thin line between control and chaos. Hito's voice came across the radio, lower than before. "Eagle Squadron, welcome to round 2. The sky darkened. Engines roared. And the next wave fell upon them. The second wave came in tighter, angrier, and more disciplined. 3 V-shaped formations of Zeros descended in overlapping layers, 15 aircraft slicing down from 26,000 feet with the coordination of a single organism. Their sun-glinted wings folded into attack angles, their propellers humming in murderous harmony. Harkness felt the shift in the air. This wasn't reckless bravado anymore. This was desperation sharpened into skill. He leveled at 17,000 feet. The Thunderbolts spread into a defensive arc, each pilot adjusting position by inches, small corrections that meant life or death when the sky throttled itself into chaos. Minnow whispered, "They're not diving for us this time. They're going for the bombers." He was right. The Zeros split into 2 elements. 8 aimed directly for the B-29s. 7 angled toward the Thunderbolts, tasked with clearing the escorts away. Major Hito assessed the geometry in a heartbeat. If the Zeros reached the B-29s untouched, they'd rip into them with cannon fire. Superfortresses could take punishment, but a sustained attack from above would gut formation after formation. Eagle Squadron, form the wall, Hito commanded in a low iron voice. No one gets past. The Thunderbolts shifted, interlocking their approach angles with the B-29's flight path. They were no longer hunters. They were a shield. Zero leader. Captain Yorikawa's perspective, Captain Ryoichi Yorikawa, 31, veteran of 4 years in the sky, stared through his gun sight at the American escorts. He had fought over Guadalcanal, over the Solomons, over Formosa. He'd watched good men burn in their cockpits, and he had buried the faces of students barely old enough to shave. He did not laugh at the Thunderbolts, but he did not fear them. Their planes are heavy, he thought. Slow to climb, slow to turn. They cannot match our precision. Strike fast, strike clean. He raised his hand, signaling his wingmen. His formation tightened around him. For the Emperor, he whispered. The collision course. The two forces closed in. 20 tons of American machinery against feather-light Japanese killers. The sky contracted into a narrow, brutal corridor of converging flight paths. Minnow's heartbeat thundered in his ears. Harkness flexed his fingers around the stick. Hito exhaled once, and only once. The leading Zero formation opened fire first. Tracer lines carved the air, white-hot threads stitching toward the Thunderbolts. Harkness rolled hard right, feeling the jugs shudder as rounds cracked past his canopy. He eased back into position. 2 Thunderbolts fired in unison. 8 50 cal machine guns per aircraft unleashed a wall of blazing metal. The Zero on the far left vanished instantly. Smoke bursting from its engine as it spiraled downward, trailing embers like a comet. Another Zero flinched, dipping its wing too low, and collided with its own wingman's prop wash, sending them both into a tangled spin. But the remainder kept coming. Inside the climb and snap, Hito's eyes narrowed. A Zero was approaching at a steep angle, aiming to break through the line and dash straight at the Superfortresses. He snapped his Thunderbolt upward, pulling into a steep climb that only the massive R-2800 engine could sustain. The G-force crushed him into his seat. Then, he cut throttle. The jug lurched. The Zero overshot. Hito firewalled the engine. 8 Brownings opened like thunder rolling through steel canyons. The Zero disintegrated into a fiery blossom. Above him, Yorikawa saw the kill and adjusted instantly. He rolled his Zero downward, slipping under Hito's guns. His wingmen followed, peeling toward the lowest B-29, its white star insignia huge and vulnerable on the underside of its wing. "Dean, take them!" Hito barked. Harkness didn't hesitate. He rolled inverted and dove. The wind hammered his canopy. His airspeed surged. The Zero trio ahead of him glimmered like sharks slipping beneath waves. He squeezed the trigger. The recoil shook the jug. A dozen tracers ripped into the lead Zero's tail. The pilot tried to bank away. Too late. His aircraft burst into shards of flaming debris. The second Zero snapped left. The third snapped right. Harkness followed the one on the right. The chase plunged them toward the B-29 formation. A superfortress filled his entire canopy, massive, serene, unaware of the duel happening at its belly.